I have only used Craigslist once in my entire life, and the very first time I used it, I got an extremely sour taste in my mouth. This is why the man posted an advertisement for a ping-pong table that I intended to buy for my friend and me. We set up a time for me to come pick it up that evening. I had to remove the back seats from my car to ensure I would be able to fit the item. I parked up in front of the man's house and messaged him, saying, "I'm here." I saw the door open, and so I got out of my car and took a short speed walk to his front door to meet him. I approached him for the handshake, but I don't think he saw my arm, and after a few unpleasant seconds I put my hand back down. He told me in his deep smoker's voice to accompany him to the basement. The entire house had some kind of distinct smell to it, not really a nasty or disturbing smell, just a smoky kind of smell. He got to the basement, and there was the ping-pong table right smack in the middle of the room. Immediately he said, "Let me get the paddles," so he ran back up the stairs and told me to wait right there. I waited for quite some time down there, believing he misplaced the paddles and was having difficulty finding them. I decided to snoop around his basement for a little bit, looking at his photographs and things. It was awkward. He had framed portraits sitting on furniture, but they were all photos of only him, no family members. There was one when he was at least with a dog. I would guess 10 minutes passed by, and I was still waiting down there, so I began getting even more snoopy. There was a back laundry area in his basement that I was beginning to observe. For whatever reason, there was a drawer to his utility desk that was hanging partially open. I opened it completely, and it showed old Polaroid pictures, but these pictures were terrible and terrifying. They were all photos taken of some woman who was tied to a chair with her mouth sealed with tape. There were also red folders placed in a row next to the pictures. They had been tagged A to Z. I did not have it in me to open the folders and see what was inside. I took out my phone to take photographs of what was inside of the drawer and planned to send them to my friends right away, but I didn't have any service down there. It was obviously time to leave. I ran back to the entrance at the top of the stairs, but my terrible scenario only got worse when I realized the door was locked. As soon as I tried the doorknob, though, I heard the deep, smoky voice of the man on the other side of the door. He was apologetic, claiming the door was accidentally locked and he would go look for the key right away. I didn't utter a word in response. I looked at the lock carefully, ran back down the stairs to the man's equipment desk, took 3 screwdrivers of different sizes, and tried every one in the keyhole for the door. The smallest screwdriver succeeded in fitting in the rectangular-shaped keyhole, enabling me to turn it just enough for me to open the door. I did not stop and look around, I just ran out the door into my car. I didn't look back at the house, I just drove to the next police station, showed them the photographs, gave them the address of the residence, and told them where to find the photographs, and that was enough for them to commence their investigation. A couple of days later I got all the information. The person was part of a child pornographic trade on the dark web, which was how he made his money. Obviously, why he chose to lock me in his basement is beyond me. I have not a single clue of what he did with me, but clearly it was nothing good. When I was 17, I had my first boyfriend. We lived in a middle-class area, very calm and beautiful streets. My boyfriend, David, also lived just a few blocks away, meaning that I could walk to her place almost frequently. One Friday night during break, when I had nothing to do, I began my walk over to David's place. It was on the latter side of the night, but I didn't actually have a curfew, therefore, it didn't matter. But shortly thereafter, I felt I could start hearing noises from around me, I mean practically behind me. The very first time I heard it, it was the sound of a bush being disturbed for a moment. I just turned my head to look around for a few seconds without stopping. I had just begun to walk a bit quicker. When I arrived at the next block, I could hear another noise, a tree or a little stick cracking. I stopped at that point and turned around. All I saw was the empty street and the trees that lined up beside every residence to separate sidewalks from people's homes. In essence, next to the street was a wall of trees, and I could not see anything or anybody that may be creating these unusual sounds. I took up the pace even more, and I was approaching the home stretch to David's house. Definitely, there was yet another sound again, this moment more like footsteps. Fast, light footsteps. I turned again without stopping. Nobody. Nothing I could see. David's house was now visible. I called, and he picked up immediately. I told him how scared I was getting because I kept hearing sounds. I walked past the trees and plants surrounding his driveway and stepped into his home. I noticed him looking through his bedroom window upstairs. He waved at me as he left on his cell phone, and I waved back. Then he asked me, "Who was that man right behind you?" I turned quickly around and saw a man crouched, walking perhaps 10 feet behind me. I began pounding on it. The man grabbed me and attempted to put me in some type of headlock, but he let go and fled away very fast. David's mother opened the door with an expression of worry on her face. She let me in and shut the door as David came running over. I was scared and felt like my heart was pounding 1,000 beats every second. David's mother hugged me and asked some questions, then contacted the police to warn of a dangerous man wandering around the neighborhood. David's mom let me stay over that night for apparent reasons, and she drove me home the following day. My grandfather told me a story. It was about a night. He took his dog for a walk. He used to have a dog, who he named Teddy in honor of a former colleague of his who died. My grandfather lives like an hour from us on a dairy farm, and there's not much that happens there. He lives with his wife, Elizabeth, who he married about 13 years back. On a daily basis, Elizabeth would take Teddy for a walk in the morning, and my grandfather would take him for a walk in the evening on a routine walk during sunset. My grandfather was walking Teddy along a normal dirt road that ran along the trees close to their home. My grandfather passed by another individual on the path, towards whom Teddy simply barked and dragged, like many dogs do when they come across strangers. My grandfather said hello to the stranger, who had a big hood up, but the stranger just walked past without even blinking an eye. Therefore, he and the dog kept walking around. Teddy continued glancing back very frequently and barking. However, my grandfather was home to shush at the leash so as to keep him walking. At some point, my grandfather would turn around and look at what Teddy was possibly barking at. The man who passed him by just several minutes ago was following him from behind a tree in the near distance. My grandfather wanted to pick up the pace as quickly as possible. At his senior age, he always keeps pepper spray in his huge coat pocket just in case. He was getting nearer to his residence when abruptly he heard clicks from the fallen leaves on the ground inches behind him. But before he could turn, he felt the chilly touch of a glove cover his mouth and nose, keeping him from yelling or breathing. My grandfather told me he could hear Teddy barking and biting at the stranger. That could have helped in loosening the man's grip a little. My grandfather told me he struggled to take the pepper spray out from his pocket, but once he did, he sprayed it at least 9 times and kept spraying it even when the man who was holding him let go and began screaming. My grandfather came as close as he could to a run to flee back to his house. He was totally fine.